Hi, this is Ed Wright from Wright, and today we're launching a new product, the Standard LG. I want to start with the name because it has a story that goes back to the spirit of what this machine is all about. Back in 1997, we created our first stand-on mower, and it was a fixed deck 52-inch model, and it was extremely rugged and extremely durable and maneuverable. Many of you own these, maybe you still own them today or run them today, and that machine has a certain elegance that no other machine has had ever since. And so that was originally our original standard. Then we made a small standard, and we made the small standard, we started informally calling that original standard, the large standard, the LG standard. And so this machine here with the name LG, it harks back to that original spirit. But this machine, it has all the modern conveniences, performance. It's the new generation of that original idea. And so this machine, it's stripped down, it's a fleet unit, it's extremely high performance, but simple. And the reason it's simple is that we've mounted the engine to the frame rather than to the cutter deck like many of our other models, which has allowed us to use integrated transmissions. And so the parts count is probably about half as many parts as would be in a typical stand-on mower. So that ruggedness, that simplicity, the machine's more affordable, and that's how we've arrived at the LG. First, let's look at the deck lift system. So here we have the deck lift selector, and it's our push button type selector, which allows us to add more spring force. So this machine is really very easy to go up and down, especially considering the engine doesn't travel with the deck, like I mentioned a second ago. So this is not like many of our machines. You can see here the engine is mounted to the frame, and that allows us to use integrated transmissions right behind the engine. Also, the integrated transmissions help bring the weight of the machine down, and it allows us to bring the fuel tank a little bit lower. A lot of our other machines, the fuel tank sits up above the tires, which raises the center of gravity, but here we can keep it nice and down low. Now, because of that, that means that our deck drive is a single belt instead of a two belt drive. And so this is our power band. So the belt goes this direction, back to the engine. It's going up this direction, and that's a longer throw. And then here we put the idler arm on this side of the machine here, and it means that this span here is a very long span all the way to the other side. And so that allows us to get that plus or minus. Now, you may have heard us over the years talk about how we have our engine floating with the deck on many models in order to extend the life of the belt, which is true, but there's a weighing of pros and cons. So here we might see a little bit more belt wear, but on the other hand, we have no hydro hoses. We have almost half the parts count in the back of this machine, which has its own cost. And so this machine here, if you're looking at like a fleet application, it's really ideal for from a long-term cost standpoint. Our cut height travels from 5 3/4 down to 2.75. However, if you move this axle bolt into the upper hole and lower the front and reset the pitch of the deck, you can get down to 1.75 on the height selector. So you have some options there. Now, the reality is that most of us cut somewhere in the middle third of this range, and in that range, the belt has very little angle or taper to it as it runs. Now, the deck lift system itself, again, it's very simple. We've got the rear lift arm, we've got the front lift arm, has the easy quick adjuster on it, and we have a front cross shaft and a rear cross shaft, which gives us lots of side-to-side stability. So very, very simple and easy to maintain, simple to adjust, simple to use. It's easy to lift the deck up and down as we go through the range. And like many of our machines, these idler pulleys here have a double row bearing in there. So usually there's just one bearing in there. So if the belt load is a little bit offset, it wears out the bearings much more quickly. With a double row bearing, we significantly extend the life of the pulley. And this large 6-inch pulley here, it's the same pulley that we use on the pump drive in the back of the machine, which extends the life of the hydros significantly as well. On the front of the machine here, you can see that we have our same heavy-duty caster setup. These are 2.5 times stronger than a typical caster pin. They're just massive, and that gives us a lot more strength to handle things like impacts with curbs. We've got our ZXT, ZXL style tie downs here on the front and on the back as well. Makes it very easy to lift up the machine or to tie it down. We have this guard here, which helps protect the muffler and the engine and helps keep our front temperatures down. And then behind that guard, the muffler also has a shield on it here to reduce some of the radiation, heat radiating off the machine or onto the engine. Now, initially we're going into production with the FX 850 carbureted engine. This engine is probably one of the most tried and true, reliable engines out there today. It's also very easy to fix. From a diagnostic standpoint, it's a carburetor, so super simple to use. It's probably one of the more efficient carbureted engines out there today. It's kind of the sweet spot in terms of power, torque, and efficiency and reliability. Coming around this side, you can see that we have the bucket, and the bucket, it's a medium-sized bucket, so it gives you a lot of capacity, and it has this tie here so that if you have stuff debris in there, it doesn't blow away while you're going down the road. I failed to mention up front, we have the 13-inch flat-free tires, so they're very trouble-free. Now coming around the back here, on the 52-inch deck model, you can see we have a 9.5-inch wide tire. Over here, on the 61-inch deck, we have a 12-inch wide tire, 24-inch by 12. That's a gnarly tire, good for hillside performance. The machine overall has a pretty low center of gravity, so it handles quite well in hills, and we'll show you that here in a little bit. The fenders have that heavy-duty metal look. It's also the same sort of Cybertruck aesthetic as our ZXT and ZXL mowers. And overall, that's the frame. One other thing I'll mention just underneath here, underneath the platform, is we have a lot of ground clearance for things like climbing up curbs and whatnot. The fuel tank is about 11 gallons, which is plenty enough capacity to run all day without having to refill with portable tanks. When the pad is on here, it's very easy to fill. You don't have to open the pad or anything like that. It's on the fill side, or the pump side, for most gas stations. And then here we have a single gauge up top. This fuel system, it's much more simple than a 2-tank system. Very straightforward, minimal components. There's no T-fitting or check valves, none of those type items. We just have a simple shut-off valve here in the filter, super easy to access and service. And overall, we just have great access to anything in the engine here. Anything that you might want to get to is super easy to get at. The electrical system here is pretty similar to many of our machines. Some of our newer machines are migrating to a different style key than we've used for many years. Has more of kind of a positive feel to it. And then in here we have our fuse box. And our electrical systems are extremely simple. We have a relay that switches between grounding the clutch or killing the engine, depending on the platform position. And it has one power fuse for the chassis. We have a fuse here if you choose to use this accessory port switch here. That's the accessory fuse, and then it comes with 2 spare fuses just in case you ever need the fuse. Also, this machine has the 12-volt charging port, which is handy if you want to plug in a portable air compressor or something like that. Here, it's very easy to access the oil reservoirs. Our reservoirs here, we use a vent line that goes down to the top of the transmissions. Many other styles of integrated transmission setups, what happens is when you change the oil and the oil goes down this tube, the oil tries to go down while the air tries to go up the same tube, and it can take a very long time to fill the oil, or you have to open the vent here on the bottom in order to get it to fill up. The alternative method here is you just run a vent line up to the top of the tank, and so when you fill it, the whole thing goes a whole lot quicker. We have isolated left and right side systems, which is great. And then going down in here, like our original classic stander, this machine is possible to change the belt while the motor's sitting on the ground fairly easily and without tools. And so here, the idler arm itself is above the belt drive, so you don't have to thread the belt over the arm. We have that large 6-inch idler, which significantly extends the life of the belt. We've got a heavy-duty section belt here, and a lot of room to work with overall to service the belt drive. Also, we have a conventional clutch mounting here, so it's pulley down, and the clutch anchor is in the lee of the belt drive, so you never have to take the clutch anchor off or the clutch wire to service either the deck belt or the pump belt. Makes everything real simple and easy to get to. While we're down here, I'll just point out these are hydro reliefs. So you push this little arm here, it releases the hydros. There's one on this side here as well. Here we have the brake adjustment. You really should never have to adjust these because the spring tension maintains a steady tension on the brake throughout its life. And then coming up here, you can see our tracking adjustment for the hand controls. You don't need 2 wrenches. You don't need to unlock the rod end at the bottom end here. You just spin this here and it turns the turnbuckle to give you the adjustment you need. Real quick and easy. Really, it's probably more of a benefit to a dealer who's doing setup or something like that. And then, like many of our systems here, when you put the parking brake on, the hand controls are locked out. So you really can't drive the machine away with the brake on. And you get that mechanical feedback rather than the engine dying on you because you're doing something out of order. Real straightforward and simple to use. Here you can see our view on a 52. The 61 obviously is a good bit wider when you're standing on the platform. We wanted to give as much comfort and suspension travel as we could without it being complex or gimmicky, because again, the whole theme of this machine here is we want it to be simple, rugged, solid, something you can put thousands and thousands of hours on over its life with very little maintenance. And so it has a very simple platform system. It has a lot more range than some of our other systems. The sides here have a slight taper, so if you're on a hill, it's a little bit more comfortable to use, and just overall significantly wider than many of our machines. The handlebar here is also wider. And the other thing that's different than some of our other systems here is you see this damper. That's a return damper on the platform, which helps the platform ride be just that much more comfortable. So here, going around a machine with the guards and covers on, the battery is very easy to get to with toolless access. Here's a view of the tire position on the 61. Has a wider deck. Same FX 850. So this mower comes in 2 models. The FX 850 with the 52-inch deck or the 61-inch deck. Here's the back. There's the contoured pad. The contoured pad is very easy to take off. You swing it up and it pops off. Here's our instrument panel. View around the machine. It's very easy to see behind you on this machine. Makes it very, very maneuverable. And overall has a wide track width, which gives us a lot of hillside stability. Overall, the price on this machine is a little bit between $11,500 and $12,000, right in that range. And so in terms of what you get for your money, you get a lot. You get a lot of performance. You can make a lot of long grass short for many years with this style machine. It has all of our typical low maintenance features, and so, for example, it doesn't have any grease fittings on it whatsoever. And some of our components, like this pivot shaft here, we've got a synthetic bushing in there that's made of a dry lubricant, and a stainless steel shaft in there, which gives us real long life. And so we use that kind of thing all over the machines. Our hand controls, these are mounted on ball bearings, and so they're sealed and they last an incredibly long time without any slop or play in the controls over the years. So that's a rundown on the Standard LG, how it's built, how it's constructed. In terms of when it comes out, we're actually in production now. It's late September as we're filming this, and we're going to show the machine at GIE here, or the Equip Expo, in a couple of weeks. And we're going to have a bunch of them out running through midwinter and spring, and so availability will improve as we start shipping them out here in the next couple of weeks. So stay in touch, and let's now go take the machine for a spin and show you how it handles on slopes and how it maneuvers. Now that you've had a chance to see this machine run, let's wrap up with a couple details and some specs. So the machine, it has 4,400 Hydrogear 4,400 transmissions in it, which is a heavy-duty, medium-sized transmission. These transmissions have a 400-hour maintenance interval, which is 1/4 as many times as the engine, and so that's a pretty good maintenance interval on them. And this drivetrain, it carries us about 12 miles an hour, and you can also put the 24x12 wheels on this machine as well. Now, when you look at a machine, what you really want to focus on is the machine's performance. And this machine, I think, hits a lot of these points. So the number one thing, in the life of a mower, it's going to cut a couple $100,000 worth of grass commercially. And so labor productivity is the first attribute you want to look at when you buy a lawnmower. You don't want to look at price first. And I'm not saying that you want to overpay for a mower. There's a lot of people out there today that are charging way too much for this equipment. We're doing our best to try to keep prices down where they need to be. But you really want to look at the performance of the machine, and this machine does that. It has a lot of power, has good runtime, good ground speed, very good maneuverability and versatility. It's great for flat ground, great for hills and terrain, all of it. And so labor productivity, that's number one. It's got that pretty strong. Number two is your operating cost. And so your operating cost is made up of things like fuel consumption, oil changes, overhauls. And so this machine, like for example, the fact that we use the double row idler bearings, that's a very small incremental cost for us, but it probably halves the number of idler pulleys you need to put in this machine throughout its life. The other thing is, for example, this subject of grease fittings. When you have grease fittings on a lawnmower, the grease fittings will typically incur somewhere around $600 to $800 of labor by the time that machine is completely worn out. And for us, we can get rid of the grease fittings for, let's say, a cost of about $100. And now that's one thing you don't have to do at the end of the week. And in the long run, you're going to save a whole lot more money. And so from an operating cost, I think this machine checks those boxes. It has, like I said, like half the parts count of many of our machines, and that becomes quite important. The third thing you want to look at when you buy a lawnmower is the cost of the machine, the capital side of it. So you have an upfront price, how many years you run it, and then a residual when you get rid of it or if you run the machine into the ground. And so a lot of these machines are somewhere around plus or minus $1,000 or plus or minus $2,000, somewhere in there. But when you're cutting a couple $100,000 of grass, it's really the smallest number. And another thing to look at with this number is that how long is this mower going to last you? So some mowers are good for 2 years, some are good for 3 years, some are 4 years, however many hours you calculate that to be. And let's say this mower is a 4-year mower instead of a 3-year mower. So now that means this mower is effectively 25% lower cost. And a lot of that just comes because it is so simple to work on, so simple to overhaul, and it's a lot more affordable to get it to go farther. And so you really want to look at the heavy dutiness and longevity of the machines. These are the principles that we live by. We're the only company that only makes mowers that are for vocational commercial use. And so we make a mower, it's never about making a mower something $9.99, right? For us, it's about making a mower that's going to make you the most money. It's going to give you the most labor productivity, the lowest operating cost, and it'll stretch your capital out as far as possible because the machine is heavy duty and it lasts longer. Certainly we're not perfect, but it's always an evolution. And this machine here, it's a next step forward in that evolution. And speaking of the evolution of things, the other thing that this machine does for us is, as you may be aware, there's a lot of people that are coming out with more and more stand-ons, and many of them are either a direct copy or a derivative of mowers much like our Standard X. And this machine here really is, I mean, we're not getting rid of the Standard X. The Standard X it has its sweet spot for certain things. It's a much shorter machine, more compact machine. It's a little bit, it costs a little bit less. So if you're in tight areas and you don't need the horsepower, it might be better for you. It's got a 48-inch deck, things like that. But for this machine here, it addresses, I think for us, a lot of the people that are copying our 13-year-old design. They're coming out with a brand new mower saying this is the latest and greatest thing, but really it's a 13-year-old concept. And this here is the next generation of that category of mower. And so I think for us, that's very important that we're always evolving our business and always bringing you more value for your money. And that's really what this is about. This is about giving you our best. And like I said, we're not perfect, but this is the next step forwards in giving you the best value that we can. Hopefully this is helpful to you. I look forward to seeing many of you at the Equip Show coming up here. And if I don't, I hope you have a great winter and that we hit the spring, hit the ground hard, running, and we have a good spring next year. See you around.